Hey everyone, welcome to Not Keeping It Real. I'm David Crane along with Tony Gavon, and this is Wrestlemania week, and so we're going to pretty much dominate the conversation with Wrestlemania related events. But before we get into that, Tony, how's your week been? Have you been keeping up with the King Kong and Godzilla and all
I
the...
have not watched that. I've been keeping up with Winter Soldier and Falcon.
That's what we're supposed to do on the show. So yes, which we will. We didn't do an episode last week because that was pretty much like all we could talk about, as far as like being talk about. And I was like, I don't know if we can fill up 30 or 40 minutes, but the show just keeps getting better and better. And so once this WrestleMania season stuff like flies by, tip over the next two episodes, so like this week and next week. Then we'll get all into Falcon and Winter Soldier with like the week or two that it has left, and there's a lot to talk about there. How are you enjoying that show though? Before we get into the wrestling stuff,
it's good. It's pretty good. It's not as good as the first episode. First episode was really good.
Really, I like this episode. Like this last episode was my favorite episode, so I was all about the Zemo, as well as like here's Sharon Connor, and also there's a Wakanda tie-in here, so. Lots of spoilers, obviously. I just can't help it. But I think the people that would actually watch the show already have, they can't wait more than a few days than to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, so I was all about this last episode. But I don't know. The best action scenes were in the first episode, so I'll give it that. But yeah, let's talk about WrestleMania. Going on Saturday and Sunday on Peacock, at least domestically, and internationally WWE Network, as well as two takeover events on Wednesday and Thursday.
That's new to me. I didn't know they were doing two of them. Wow.
Okay, I'm glad you're up to date on the NXT, Tony. So no, honestly, when you're the fourth most important show on wrestling, that's the truth, folks. No matter as much as the internet would like to hate us for it, you're literally the fourth most important show.
They really think they have enough of a roster to do two shows? Is it going to be, is everyone working double duty, or they really think they have enough for two nights?
Well, you got to remember they're trying to fill up like 2 hours on like USA. So like that's the first takeover. It's like it's a USA episode, like a USA special, so they can maybe beat AEW in the ratings, maybe. And the second night would be like an actual takeover. And we can go into that right now, actually, since, maybe some of our listeners haven't like actually delved into that. You haven't probably delved into it from what sounds. So let's go to that card really quick. Pete Dunne versus Kushida is on night one. So I'm just running down night one right now. Pete Dunne and Kushida, obviously that could be an awesome match.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
MSK, Wesley and Nash Carter versus Grizzled Young Veterans versus Legado del Fantasma in a triple threat for the vacant tag team titles. Now, I'm not like huge on Grizzled Young Veterans. We talked about that, but I do think like this is like literally their last shot to get those tag titles. So like they could turn things around, and it would maybe be like more logical. So like MSK could like chase them, and I think like Legado del Fantasma is not really like in that consideration. I don't think
he could be there just to take the fall.
Yeah, exactly. So get everybody on the show kind of thing, right? Another big match. Walter defends the NXT UK Championship against Tommaso Ciampa. So that'll be like that's pretty much the match right there. Now they did like this weird thing last week on NXT where they did a battle royal and the last 6 guys eliminated. They were going to be in this gauntlet match that's going to be on TakeOver Night 1, and whoever wins the gauntlet match faces Johnny Gargano for the North American title on Night 2. And so the people involved in that are Leon Ruff, former American champion, Isaiah Swerve Scott, so Swerve, right? Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, Dexter Lumis, and LA Knight. Actually, have you checked out LA Knight since he's debuted, Tony?
Yes, I've unfortunately been subjugated to LA Knight.
To the white man's rock impersonation. I gotcha. Yeah.
It really comes off as cringy fan pretending to be The Rock.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen him enough in a lot of years of his work in between Impact and then earlier before that in
no, he's not bad, but this gimmick is doing nothing.
No, I'm not saying he's good though. That's the thing. Like he's average in the ring. Eli Drake. You watched him years in championship wrestling from Hollywood. I'm always surprised when he gets a national TV gig, and this one's working out really well because he got the really marketing him really well. He has a good look right now, and they're working on that.
I think that's how he gets all of his bookings. They just look at him and they see a star, and then he starts talking and he starts wrestling and he's anything but.
I was gonna say kind of like plain Jane. He's not he's what you said really, but it's you were a little harsher than I would be. But yeah, exactly. So out of this lot, between Swerve, Ruff, Bronson Reed, Cameron Grimes, Dexter Lumis, and LA Knight, the guy I think that would face Johnny Gargano logically, because there is a storyline going on between the two of them, is Dexter Lumis, and that's cool. I'm okay with that. I'm not big on Dexter Lumis, but he's all right. It's a babyface serial killer gimmick, so that's cool. I don't think he would give Johnny Gargano his best match. I think that's pretty obvious. If you want to go that direction, I mean, probably on Ruff, honestly, but or Swerve. So logically, though, babyface wise, it would be like Dexter or Bronson Reed. He's going to face Johnny Gargano, so whatever. And then the main event that night, Io Shirai defends the NXT Women's Championship against Raquel Gonzalez. And I'm a big Io Shirai fan, so I think that'll be a fun match to watch. It's going to be a more interesting than usual weekly NXT episode, so that'll be cool. Then night 2, and I should mention before we get too deep in, we are going to talk about some of our nostalgia, because really WrestleMania is all about nostalgia. So we will talk about a little bit when we get into WrestleMania about the things that we remember about WrestleMania, that we like about WrestleMania, our favorite matches and our favorite WrestleManias. But yeah, going into night 2 for TakeOver, the main event is Finn Balor versus Karrion Kross. What do you think about Karrion Kross? I don't know how much you've been exposed to him, Tony, but what do you think of him?
My friend who's a big NXT homer says he's really good and he deserves to be where he's at. I don't see it. I think he's just okay.
Yeah.
The fact that they're treating him like a big star that could conceivably beat Finn Balor, it's just like, okay, I don't get it, but, I'm also not a regular NXT watcher, so I can't really say one way or another definitively, I am right, they are wrong. But from my point of view, I haven't heard much of him on the indie scene, and from what little I've seen of him in NXT, it's just been like, he's good, just not at that main event challenging for the NXT title level guy.
It's interesting. I saw him a few years back at an Impact Wrestling taping, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody dragged me to one in Las Vegas, and it was kind of like he was over, and he probably was over for some reason that happened before the show, but I think he's one of those guys where a lot of the internet's cool with it, him being pushed because he's big, but he's an okay big guy. There's the big guys that they want to push, that the internet fans are into. And then there's the big guys that Vince is into, like Baron Corbin or whatever.
And it's a thing too, because this is not main roster WWE. This is NXT. So usually you don't expect stuff like that to happen, but this feels like it's a Hunter pet project. So he's gonna excuse whatever weaknesses he has as a talent. Hunter's project. So he's gonna be like, okay, we know he's not that good in the ring, but I'm doing something with him, so we're gonna push him to the
match. And as a fan, I get really irritated when because you haven't been watching as long with NXT the past year or so as I have. I've been watching pretty consistently, but they've been pushing him like crazy. They gave him really cool entrance, They gave him like a hot like side dish scarlet on his arm, and the look, they do really cool lighting when he comes out and everything. And he won the world championship last summer and beat Keith Lee for it. And that was like really, to me, that was like really sudden. That was like, this guy's been here for like 3 months basically in NXT, and they gave him the heavyweight championship. And I was like, that's way too soon. He hadn't been beaten by anybody. I'm not sure if he's been beaten by anybody since, but he got injured pretty quickly after. I think it was like after like the match that he won the title in, he got injured. So that vacated the title. And Finn Balor won it eventually, and he's had it since. And so that kind of makes sense that they're logically going to have that match. But yeah, I really hope Finn Balor wins because he's actually a really good wrestler. And like Karrion Kross, to me, I haven't seen anything from him that feels big league as far as what goes on in the ring. I think some people are just really into his, his character and his mannerisms and stuff like that.
That's fine if it's a main roster kind of thing where work rate's not that important and you can get by on a gimmick. And if you're big and you're really charismatic and they have the right gimmick for you, you can get by on that. But this is NXT. This is the work rate brand. This is you usually expect, really good 4-star, if not higher main event, and I just don't know if he's that kind of guy.
Well, I think ultimately, because he's in this position, basically the biggest NXT show of the year against Finn Balor, that if he doesn't produce in the ring to a like significant level, like they might still push him. They might be WWE world champion in a couple of years. I don't know. The way they like big guys. But as far as like winning over the internet fans to be like, yeah, he really is good in the ring is. I think a lot will be revealed in this match, one way or the other, if he's like got any go at all as far as like having great matches or not. So, but what will definitely be a great match is Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly. You can't go wrong there. So, that's the kind of like enough said. Gargano
that's part of the problem too. You have Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly in the co-main event, and it's like, okay, but you're sticking Karrion Kross in the title scene. It's like one of these things is not like the other, and it's like he's good and all, but you have all these other guys that you're not doing as much with as you should.
Right. Well, I kind of agree because really the best main event that they could have produced for this week would have been a triple threat between Finn Balor, Adam Cole, and Kyle O'Reilly. A lot of people think that they are still going to gravitate Kyle O'Reilly in that, like he'll eventually become world champion.
Well, see, what I would have done is that Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly feud is really hot. I know probably some people is going to rub the wrong way. I see that as a really hot feud, so I would try to find a way to hot shot the belt probably onto Cole again. That way you have the really hot feud for the title.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know. I get it, but like I also think that like Adam Cole as NXT champion has been done to death. Like I'm one of those people.
It would just be a
like I love Adam Cole. He's fucking great. But like I love Adam Cole. He's fucking great. Do something different with him. That's all I'm asking.
I would just use him as a transition so you can put it ultimately on Kyle O'Reilly.
Right, I get you though. Yeah, that's the chase, and yeah, I'll take it. I'll still take a fifth, whatever it is, title reign from Adam Cole over Karrion Kross getting that strap. So
exactly.
Yeah. That works for me. Really, can't have everything the way perfect, but that would be better. Gargano's gonna wrestle somebody, so that's cool. That's gonna be a good match. Whoever he can always pull it out. So, this is an interesting match. So Jordan Devlin versus Santos Escobar in a ladder match for the Cruiserweight Championship, because as some know, Jordan Devlin got his championship stripped from him when he was, during COVID, right, during the pandemic. And he couldn't be in the U.S., so they stripped him of it. And Santos Escobar is an interim Cruiserweight champion. And now they're going to, they're going to have both belts up there like Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon in WrestleMania 10. Relive that glory, and they can really pull it off. Those guys are pretty great wrestlers. So ladder match, so that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
NXT Women's Tag Team Championship, Ember Moon and Shotzi Blackheart versus Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. I'm totally into this match. I hope Candice wins the championship. I'd be really happy. So I don't, but that's the card. So it's a very fine matches on that card. So it does qualify as a takeover because they're really like I think almost every takeover, with the exception of like one or two, it's had always 5 matches. And yeah, that looks like that's basically going to be a much better show as the WrestleMania, folks. So I'll give them that much.
Sad to say.
Yeah, but it's also like not even a contest. So, before we get into WrestleMania, are you familiar with who is entering the Hall of Fame tomorrow? It's tomorrow, apparently.
I know some of the names. I don't know all of them. I know Kane's going in. I know Colley's going in. I know Osborne's going in, and that's about it, I think.
I'm just going to run it down. So this is going to be an interesting Hall of Fame, I think, because I think it's all virtual. I don't think there's a crowd for this. And it's also like the first real special. I don't know. It's the first time at the Hall of Fame has been a special on Peacock, and they've been really advertising it and this and that. So I don't actually, because they're doing 2 years. They're doing last year's and they're doing this year's and doing like full classes. So I don't expect like the speeches to go very long or any of that. Like I expect this to be all wrapped up in like 3 hours, like instead of like 8 hours, like it could be like if they went like full tilt with it. But hopefully it'll be fun to watch. The 2020 class who weren't able to get inducted last year, but I think they're going to do something for them tomorrow, is JBL, the British Bulldog, Jushin Thunder Liger, who only had like 1 match in the WWE, but that's cool, man. The New World Order, and that's like Hollywood Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Sean Waltman. The Bella Twins, and the celebrity for 2020 will be William Shatner, which is kind of fun. And the Warrior Award will go to Titus O'Neil because he's a good daddy. From what I know, he's a really good dad. He's a good dad. I don't. And also, he's from Tampa as well, so that helps. So.
You just need that one story a couple of years down the road where his son rips off a liquor store or something. If we could be like, bank up job he did there, Titus.
Yeah, well, I mean, life is, it's all random, so who knows? It could happen, right? Or he could be like the next president, or not the next president, but like,
I think he's a little young to be the next president.
Yeah, so, eventually.
President, I know what you're saying, yes.
It could go either way. It wouldn't be on. It's not how kids turn out or not. It's not on parents, I think. So if you're a bad parent out there, your kid's gonna be fine. I don't listen to me about parenting. So 2021 class. I like this class. It's got Molly Holly in it, so already I think it's a great class. Eric Bischoff, Kane. The Great Khali, of course, it's gonna be great with the Great Khali. Rodney. Go ahead. Sorry.
Can't go wrong with Great Khali, man.
Yeah, man, he's like 4 world champion.
Oh, he's the headliner, right?
Right? Who is the headliner with that class? I don't think they have a headliner for that class.
Probably gonna be the end of it.
I think it's Kane, right? If they were like pushed, they would be like, it's Kane, damn it, So
no, it's probably gonna be NWO. That'd be my guess.
Well, no, because they're separating the years, right? So NWO is clearly the one for 2020, but they have no audience for this one. So they're doing both.
Oh, gotcha.
They're doing both. They're doing both years. So 2021's class, they had to have a headliner, which doesn't matter because 2020 might be the headliner. I don't know. NWO is obviously the biggest act on both nights or both years. It's very confusing, folks. Anyway, so for 2021, you also get Rod Van Dam and Ozzy Osbourne as the celebrity Hall of Famer, which makes sense, actually. Like, he's one of the ones where it's like, okay, yeah, he was at WrestleMania 3, so, he did stuff. I mean, he sticks out. And I don't know, I really like that class. It's got RVD in it and Molly Holly. Kane's cool.
RVD's the one that's where I'm like, isn't he still wrestling?
I think a few months ago, I know he'd been wrestling for a while in Impact, but I don't think he's been on TV in maybe a month or two. So, He also referred to All Elite Wrestling about a year ago as All Petite Wrestling, and but I think he was working heel at the time, so in Impact. So I kind of think that's like he's kind of what he does. Actually, I remember him doing an entire shoot interview once when he was working heel in ECW, and I was like, this guy. He was like working the shoot interview like a total like heel, and it was like, this guy is such a fucking arrogant asshole. What the fuck is his problem? And then if you met RVD or you've like really followed his career enough, you know, like he's not like an arrogant asshole. Actually, I guess he just cares about the gimmick or the business enough to actually work that heel gimmick. So I give him props on that. But maybe he really does think all elite wrestling is all petite wrestling. Doesn't help his case though, if he wants to get a job.
Exactly.
So, he's a little out of shape these days, but you know he's old, so you know he's Rob Van Dam. You can't knock him. You know, he's the kind of guy that can have like a paunch and work with a paunch, and people should just like be cool with it because it's Rob Van Dam. He's one of the great athletic wrestlers.
Always point to Chris Jericho. You try to say that.
I mean, I also think people should make fun of Jericho for his like junior body. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger was that movie Junior. Like, it's not cool, man. Like, I think like Jericho can work. That's all that matters. You know, like I don't think it matters. As a fat guy, I approve. So
you're also not a world champion of any major wrestling federations.
No, I'm not, and I don't even wrestle. So I don't
go.
All right, very good. So then we go into Wrestlemania. Let's talk about Wrestlemania first, about like what we enjoy about, and then we'll run down this questionable card at times. I will quiz you first, Tony. What's your like 3 favorite WrestleManias? Not top, like not the best ones that everybody thinks are the best, but you're just 3 favorite.
3 favorites. I think
or a few favorites. You don't have to come up with 3.
Yeah, well, no, I can actually think of a couple. Obviously, the big one, the one that's every basic person could think of, is 17. 17's great. Obviously, it's not bell to bell great. There's a lot of filler. There's a lot of stinker matches on that card. But as a whole, it's a really good
yes, sir.
Are we going to run down this WrestleMania 17 card? Because I could be here all day and run down all the crappy matches. The 3-way hardcore match.
I think this is actually a really. I think we can run it down a little if you want to. Like, I think that might be an interesting, because everybody knows. I mean, the universal favorite of like pretty much everybody is WrestleMania 17. It's also my number 1. Yeah. So we can go into like what would be considered kind of like a crappy match on the show, because it's such a glorified show. It might be kind of fun to look at the card and just be like, that one. That's a shitty match. Not be like, okay.
Well, like I said, that 3-way hardcore match is pretty bad.
I knew that was going to come up, man.
Taz versus Eddie Guerrero. Taz and the APA versus Right to Censor.
Yeah. China versus Ivory.
China versus Ivory is a glorified squash match, which...
It was not very good, yeah.
No, and then what's another one on that card? That ill-fated undercard of WrestleMania 17.
I'm looking at it. Right. I'm going to look at it right now.
Battle Royal is good for what it is. I can't say it's bad.
That's right. That's right.
Great.
The gimmick Battle Royal is like one of the big highlights of that show. Nothing in the ring was a highlight, but everybody coming down to the ring was a highlight. And I think there's a special I recommend. It's every WrestleMania match ranked ever. It's like over almost 400 matches. And it's on YouTube now. It's a 5-hour thing, and I've been watching it. It's from Clutch Wrestling, so just YouTube that. They're probably pretty popular items.
You can make an argument that Triple H versus Undertaker is bad. I don't think it's that bad, but
no, it's not bad.
Consider everything else on the card. It's like,
I have a friend that thinks that's the best match they've had at WrestleMania. Like they're like, forget about the matches that they had later on. Like that's the best one they've had. So that's not a bad match.
Everyone's entitled to their run.
I was going to say that the gimmick Battle Royal out of like 400 WrestleMania matches was ranked by this Clutch Wrestling, which they did a good job on their like 5-hour doc, but it's 96 of the WrestleManias ever, and I'm like, no fucking way. It needs to be like 46. It's one of the best WrestleMania matches ever, folks. All right, so just make sure between that and the TLC match, that's pretty much all you need for this show. I mean, Shane and Vince, that was fun. But I think you really hit it with, I mean, your first guesses were the most correct ones. I mean, it's the Taz APA, a right to censor 6-man doesn't.
Oh, Dave can't hear you. I hope it's not the connection that's the problem.
Like very like average. It could have been good if Eddie was with like anybody else on the roster at the time. So
exactly.
So there's that. But yeah, so all right, so we got one down. That's my number one too. So fire off another one. What's another favorite of yours?
Another favorite of mine is, which I feel like doesn't get enough love, is WrestleMania 19.
Yes.
I thought that was really it. On paper it was really good, and in some ways some of the matches didn't deliver, but I still feel overall it's a really strong Mania.
So like 19 took place in Seattle. And I think it's legitimately like the second best WrestleMania ever. Like that.
As far as consistency goes, it's right up there. If anything, if you wanted a WrestleMania that was really consistent, I think it'd be hard to beat on an average level where the overall card doesn't really dip all that much. I think consistently, WrestleMania 19 is probably the best on average.
Oh, consistently, yeah. Well, it's interesting because like when I remember watching it live at the time on back home, and like I was like, wow, they really didn't give Ray and Matt a lot of time, and that could have been, they could have gone longer with that. And then I forget what the second match was, but the third match was Benoit and Rhino versus Los Guerreros versus the World's Greatest Tag Team, and that went like less than 10 minutes, and I'm like, they really could have done a whole lot more here. They kind of rushed 4 matches in an hour. Oh, the second match was a women's match, and I think it was pretty good. But again, they didn't give them a lot of time. But then they had the 5 big matches, and they gave each match like 20 minutes to basically, or 20 to 25 minutes, do like whatever the fuck they wanted to do. I guess they just gave them like a lot more time than you would give any 5 matches at any WrestleMania to just be a showcase. And they filled those 5 matches up. Those 5 matches filled up 3 hours. And they were all really great. So I guess Vince and Hogan, right? Like that was on that show, which was a fun brawl. I mean, it was very dramatic and it had a great story going in. And then Piper shows up at the end. I mean, that's just great fucking booking all the way around. Triple H and Booker T, which had a very controversial angle going in. Very racist is another word for it, but whatever. The match itself, really good. There's Brock and Angle. Obviously, that's like a classic clash. And, Brock doing the 450 off the top and almost breaks his neck.
Shooting star, Dave.
What?
He was going for the shooting star.
Shooting star. My bad. But yeah, the whole thing is just a great fucking night of wrestling.
Well, so. And then the match that everybody talks about is Shawn Michaels versus Jericho. That's
yes. I don't know. I know why. That's like my top 5 matches personally. So
it's obvious, and it kind of goes without saying. I can see why you would ignore it. It's like, well, duh. That's the big match that everybody talks about. That's the match on that card. That's
the match. But also, yeah, the second place, I'd say like Kurt Angle, Brock, second place, and then third place like Hogan. Now I'm trying to think what that 5th match was, but Hogan and Vince, I think, had just all this great drama and booking in it. So they made it good. What?
Is that the 5th match you're trying to think of? Rock and Austin?
Rock and Austin for the last time, right? Like in their third, the climax of their feud, Rock finally gets the win. In Austin, that's his last match ever, folks. So, I mean, that's historic for many reasons, obviously. So, yeah, it's a very big show. That's a good number 2. I'm glad you're saying these things. Because honestly, that's kind of like my top 2 WrestleManias. So I don't know. Maybe fire off another one. Maybe we all match on all these things. So.
I just remember Cena I think he was originally scheduled to be on the card, and then he got beat.
Well, you know what they were doing actually, the Angle at the time was they didn't know if Angle could go. Yeah. Because he had that broken neck, basically, right? And they were like,
the plan was to put in Benoit in that spot, but then I guess Kurt felt like he was good to go.
No, I heard that because they were really okay. I not only heard, but I would fight anybody on this, that it was going to be Cena. because Cena, they were working all of a sudden, like they get the bad news about Kurt, and all of a sudden, like Cena's working this random angle with like Brock. I don't think they were like featured together, but he was definitely running Brock down a lot in his promos, and it seemed like they were easily going to fit like Cena with Brock if they can have Angle go. And although Benoit Brock would have been fucking awesome, but but I think they were going to go with Cena. And then next month they did do Cena and Brock, so whatever. But yeah, that would have been interesting WrestleMania. Give me one more.
Okay, and I'm sure you're probably going to go with this one too.
Oh, okay.
It's gotta
I don't know, man. My three is tricky, so
Mania,
go ahead.
Mania 30.
Oh shit, yeah, okay. You had me at Mania 30. Daniel Bryan, my all-time favorite wrestler, who became basically the hottest wrestler in 20 years in the business. It's basically Steve Austin and The Rock. And it was organic. It was something that the WWE couldn't control. They didn't want it to happen, but it did. He would somehow, like at the time, CM Punk was able to get like all the men on his side, cheer him at the shows and all that. John Cena was able to get the women and the children, but the men hated him. Daniel Bryan was a character wrestler, whatever, performer that was able to get like all the men on his side, all the women, all the children. So all of a sudden you had like the biggest pops ever, like for, I would say, a good 8 months. It just became louder and louder and louder. And you had the biggest pops for this performer. And what he was supposed to wrestle Sheamus originally on the show. So the WWE didn't really want to do anything with him. They just wanted to keep him in the mid card where they thought he belonged. But Batista didn't really work out as like a top babyface, challenging Randy Orton. And so they worked out a better plan, you know. Daniel Bryan making Triple H tap out in the opener, and then the last match of the night, holding up the championships. I mean, that to me, those two matches just make the whole WrestleMania 30 fantastic. But you can also include, and I just have so many opinions about WrestleMania 30, so I'm just going to go on a tangent. Brock beating Undertaker, ending the streak, which like really if you're going to have him Undertaker and the streak end, you didn't really need to give that to Brock, but they did. It was a last minute decision, and Vince, you know, like he made that last minute decision call, and I think he did it, you know, because I really think about this a lot, talking to friends about this show. I think he did it because he wanted to basically make have people talk about something else other than Daniel Bryan from WrestleMania 30. He wanted to distract from the real story, folks, and that was Daniel Bryan with all the championship gold at the end of the night.
My impression was the plan was to build up Brock so that when you had Roman ultimately beat him, it'd be a big deal. Because he would beat Taker at Mania, break the streak. He'd beat John Cena, or the original plan was Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam, so that when you finally do the big match between Brock and Roman Reigns at Mania, you know, he's run through the roster. And the only person that could stop him is Roman Reigns. I think that was the original plan.
That year?
That
would have been a little bit of a rush on Roman, though.
Because originally it was supposed to be Brock versus Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam, but then Daniel Bryan got hurt, so they did that Cena Brock Lesnar match at SummerSlam. Yeah. You remember the one where Cena got no offense in?
Right. That was supposed to be, I think, Daniel Bryan's spot. They were just going to have Brock, you know, beat the shit out of Daniel Bryan. And like JR did interesting columns back then. He's done them over the years where basically like he hints to like what is actually going to be like the next big angle, you know. And you know, he kind of hinted that like the week of WrestleMania after WrestleMania 30, like, oh, Brock is like the new threat on the horizon, you know, and it's like, oh, maybe they'll do Brock and Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam. And I think that totally was the spot, and Cena's filled that spot. And I guess that's okay. I mean, it just sucks that Daniel Bryan got hurt, you know. I mean, at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I think it's for the best. I don't know if I would have wanted to see Brock destroy Daniel Bryan. We ultimately did get that match, and it was really good. And I'm glad we got a back and forth match as opposed to the original where, you know, Bryan was going to get no offense and it was just going to be a squash.
Yeah, I was there live, Staples Center. But yeah, they actually gave him a lot more offense in that match than people would expect. So it wasn't like a Ricochet deal or even a Cena at SummerSlam deal. So, but yeah, those are three really good WrestleManias. I don't know. I get like kind of like sometimes I think about 10 in that spot, number 3, but I mean, you're talking about my favorite, then it's got to be WrestleMania 30 as well. So good guessing, Tony. I guess these are your favorites too, so that's fine.
Another thing I really want to point out about that Mania that I really like, and this is probably really consistent with what I've said before in the past. I always like I like all killer, no filler shows, and this is that to a T. Now, obviously, you have a couple of matches in there. I think the Vicky Guerrero Invitational, and then the 6-man tags, the Shield versus Kane, that New Age Outlaws.
Yeah,
you got pretty much just a 7-match card on a 4-hour show. Everything that was important got time, and really there was the big 5 matches, and that's pretty much it. And
I mean, it was memorable for like the most passionate fans for a very long time, and it wasn't just because of Daniel Bryan, but it was it was mostly because of Daniel Bryan, but also because of the streak ending. I mean, those are just 2 massive stories on the same show, makes it stand out as like one of the best WrestleManias ever, and also like the best one in probably like 10 or 15 years, honestly. So,
Did you have any ones that you want to pick, or did we pick the exact same Mania?
Those were like the exact same ones. I was going to go a little bit with 10, but I'll start. I'll just do a quick rundown of my favorite matches at WrestleMania. It would be 30 with Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton, and Batista. That's like my all-time greatest WrestleMania moment. Like I just loved him having the championship. That whole night was about him, and I met the guy when he was on the indie scene, hung out with him a little bit, but you never expect like this guy to be the face of the WWE, and he totally was put in that position because it was like their hands were forced, so they had to by the fans because they cannot deny how great Daniel Bryan was. So,
Agreed.
So just fantastic memory. Second favorite like match at WrestleMania would be Bret and Owen at WrestleMania 10. I'm a huge Owen Hart fan, and that match was just an all-out showcase. That was like the first. Well, no, that was the second WrestleMania I watched as a kid, and that match just like really stood out. I remember as a kid like being all like buying into all the hype, liking all the baby faces, but like the 2 guys that really like made me like them, that were heels, were Owen and Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler because he was funny, and Owen because like he was funny too. He had a great personality, obviously, but also because like his wrestling was so damn good in that match. It's just like it's slick, you can't get much better than that. Third, I think is legitimately like universally what should be considered the greatest WrestleMania match ever, and that's Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 because they literally wrestled like a perfect fucking match.
Wow. I don't know if I'd say perfect. That one spot where Taker jumps over the top rope got really scary,
but it was fun though.
Was good, but it was
entertainment, folks. It's like I'm cool with it.
It's my favorite Mania match, and I think it's probably the best Mania match. But with that said, I wouldn't say it was perfect because that spot was really scary.
Okay, well, maybe not. Yeah, but it was definitely. It was like 30-minute match, and I know like old school wrestling fans are like, it's always Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage, always Ricky, and those same people are like, it's Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. That's the best WrestleMania match. So. So I just, everybody's got their favorites, so that's why it's my number 3 for me. But as far as being universally like considered the best WrestleMania match, it definitely earns that distinction. But others might disagree, and maybe it's Bret Austin for some people. I don't know. But talk to me a little bit more. I actually have to. My battery went really fast on my computer, so Phil, just talk to us a little bit.
Yes, I'll
filibuster about some of your favorite WrestleMania matches or whatever. I'm just gonna get a cord to charge it. So
by all means. So like you were mentioning earlier, with some of our WrestleManias just so happening to overlap. Your 3 matches are very similar to mine. Obviously, my number 1, like I mentioned earlier, is going to be Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. I felt that match was really good. Some people have said that their rematch at Mania, I think it was 28, was better. And I'm just not of that opinion. It's a really good match, but when you're talking the best matches of Mania, that match at WrestleMania 20, no, it's 25. Yeah, the 25th anniversary. That was a really good match. You mentioned it earlier, Hart versus Hart at Mania 10. That's a really good match. That's sort of the opposite of what you usually see nowadays of wrestling, where it's all these crazy spots, all these crazy moves, and really it was just getting down to the mat, doing some basic wrestling stuff. I mean, obviously you saw some really cool state of the art, chain wrestling spots, but for the most part, it wasn't really a high flyer match. It was just a bunch of guys trading holds, doing chain wrestling, and I thought it was really good. And I can't think of a third match. There's a bunch of other matches that come to mind. Like, obviously, we mentioned earlier, Mania 19, Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. That's a really good one. Or Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 20. That's a really good match.
Yeah.
You can make an emotional argument, not really work weight rise, that Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair was a good match.
I was there for that one.
Yeah. I'm like,
it's an emotional match. Just
an emotional match. I don't know about bell to bell. Obviously, when you're talking about emotional, you can't really outdo Rock versus Hogan at Mania 18.
All right.
Bell to bell, work rate wise, it wasn't the best, but as far as the big emotional match that everybody's into, the dream match, it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, people definitely. It was otherwise a pretty bad WrestleMania, like it didn't have a lot going for it, but that match really saved it in a lot of ways from
it made that card. That was in
that WrestleMania 9, 2, and 11 category of just awful WrestleMania. It was it's an alright WrestleMania because that's Rock. No.
Those are our WrestleMania thoughts.
What are we talking about? Nostalgic thoughts. What's that?
I said, what are we talking about next week?
Wait, what? How much time do we have left?
We got 4 minutes left.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
okay. Damn, talking about all this nostalgia, and next week we're going to talk about the results of WrestleMania. I'll run down the good night card, okay, Tony? Night 2, you don't need to worry about night 1. The only thing good on that is Cesaro or Seth Rollins. But night 2 of WrestleMania, it's going to have Roman Reigns, Edge, and Daniel Bryan. And we talked a lot about that match, but having Daniel Bryan back in the main event, that works for me. I like that. Rhea Ripley is going to challenge Asuka for the Women's Championship. Apparently, from what happened on Raw tonight and what I read, they're working Rhea in a heel gimmick, despite the fact that fans are going to cheer the fuck out of her. And I think it's just possibly set her up with Becky down the line or Charlotte, when they return. So that's cool. As long as they end up giving Rhea Ripley the title in her first match in the WWE, that works for me. So, and then they're also going to have Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So in Ring of Honor or PWG fan, is going to love that match. There's some other matches on there too. Randy Orton, The Fiend, Big E, Apollo Crews, Riddle, and Sheamus. Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler versus potential challenger from the first night for the women's tag team titles. From what you know about WrestleMania, Tony, what are you looking forward to this week at WrestleMania?
I think it was advantageous that we didn't get to run down the Mania card.
Yeah, I think it makes sense actually, because really WrestleMania is a holiday, folks. But some of its luster beyond it being WrestleMania, it's kind of worn off a little bit when you get a card like this.
Rhea Ripley match with Asuka, that's going to be really good.
Yeah.
I'm curious what goes on in the main event with Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman Reigns. You were right about why they booked that match. I originally thought maybe one of them are hurt, or they want to try to protect Edge or Roman Reigns. You may wind up being correct, and they did it just because they had no faith in Edge being over as a babyface.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Other than that, no, not much I'm looking forward to. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Cesaro versus Rollins, that's like a SmackDown, top of the hour main event.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely, even Owens and Zayn to a certain extent, you could see that as being oh, cool, SmackDown's going to have Zayn and Owens, but you don't necessarily expect to be at WrestleMania. But those guys are going to work. So
there was a time when that match would have been a big deal. Doing it in front of a half-empty crowd, and it's
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, but all right, folks. Next week we'll be talking about the results of that, the takeovers, Tony's got a lot to watch. No, you want to pick and choose, Tony, you can. There's almost too much shit to watch. Not to mention all the GCW stuff that I'm going to pick and choose between because they have like 10 different indie shows going on that weekend as well.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Chico Scorpio's going to wrestle a lot, so that'll be fun.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah, right. So that's it for us this week, folks. Next week, tune in for a WrestleMania recap. See you then.